If your business isn't growing, it's dying. That's the best advice I've ever received from a leader of one of the best companies I've worked with. If I could be more specific, though, knowing what I know now, I'd say if your business isn't improving efficiency year over year, it could become outpaced by your competition. It's tough to grow, and you can't always be in growth mode. Two of the best indicators for your company's growth capability are working capital capacity and company culture. The amount of working capital your business has access to is an indicator of its ability to scale or run efficiently. Your company culture shapes how stable that growth or efficiency will be. The best businesses know how to seize opportunities in the moment, but they also recognize they can only take on opportunities that their company can handle, so they proactively prepare. In this video, we're going to go over 4 areas you should focus on as an owner or executive when scaling your subcontracting business. Number 1, focus on 3 specific financial ratios. First of these is current ratios. Current ratios are the ratio of the value of your assets over the value of your liabilities. The bare minimum ratio your construction company should have is 1. If it's below a 1, your company owes more than your company is worth. A simple example is a company that has a 2-to-1 ratio. They could liquidate their assets and pay their debts twice. Versus the opposite, if a company has a ratio of 0.5 to 1, when they liquidate their assets, they could only pay off half of their debts. Obviously, lenders don't like the possibility of only getting some of their money back if a company goes out of business and liquidates. Next is debt to equity ratio. Debt to equity ratios are calculated taking company debt divided by total equity. Why does this one really matter? This is one of the identifiers that lenders use to see how much risk a company has. Basically, think of it like this. If your debt to equity ratio is 1 to 1.5, you're in the green. Your company is well run. If your debt to equity ratio is 1.5 to 2, you're in the yellow. Some cause for concern, but it could be circumstantial. If your debt to equity is more than 2, you're in the red and a high risk. A high risk client means they are more likely to not pay off their debt. So if investors approve them, it's with significantly higher interest rates and lower credit limits. Lastly is your overhead to revenue ratio. This is the most important to pre-construction and estimating. It's your overhead percentage that goes into your bid. The industry average is 10% overhead and 5% profit. If your overhead is under 10%, you obviously are making more profit than the industry average. With those bid rates and during recessions, you could cut out some of the profit if you needed to squeeze into a budget. If your overhead is between 10 to 15%, you are less efficient than the industry average, and you are going to have less profit compared to the industry average to use to grow. If your overhead gets to be over 15%, bidding industry average rates means you are basically paying to build projects. This one can trick people because you can't look at the ratio in a 6-month or less lens, or you may interpret it incorrectly. If you look at it through a 6-month lens and you've been waiting 2 to 3 months on a couple projects to start, you'll have less money coming in and a lot of overhead sitting idle. At the same time, you could have just started a massive project and not onboarded or moved people over yet, so it looks like you are running extremely lean and could cut the number to be a little more competitive. You need to look at it as a 9 to 12 month basis, depending on your business, because a snapshot of anything less could give you the wrong point of view. It's bad to be overhead heavy, long term without growth, but it's also an issue to be overhead light, then not be able to support taking on new work. For a more in depth look at how financially savvy subcontractors are scaling their businesses, check out Build's latest white paper. Number 2, bid strategically and be selective so you don't subscribe to the thoughts that your company is a commodity. Everyone struggles with giving in to feelings that the goal is to collect all the backlog you can as fast as possible so you aren't worried where the next project is coming from. But that gives the image your company is a commodity and is part of the race to the bottom. When bids get to that point, the owner, the contractor, and all of the subcontractors lose. So, how do you avoid that inevitable race to the bottom? First, track your current manpower capabilities to your current labor projections on projects. Second, use that data to show contractors you have the labor capacity to take on their job during the time frame they're looking for. Third, use that dynamic to create a scarcity of your service. Force them to decide quickly because they know you have other projects you're bidding to, and you won't accept more projects than you have available manpower for. It's a power move when you can show that your competition can only promise capability and manpower, but ultimately drop the ball after they get the contract. Fourth, be transparent about why you're holding firm on price. Clients love to say, I'm getting this for X% cheaper from this side. If you match it, the job is yours. If you hear that, politely decline because you don't know that company's estimating process to know their inclusions or exclusions, or if they're even real. By showing confidence, you know what you're talking about. You can quantify your labor capabilities and understand the value of that in today's market. Number 3, create a healthy financial culture to prioritize billing and collecting invoices. What does that even look like? From what I've learned from $500 million plus subcontracting companies annually in the top 300 ENR, it's 3 things: standards, continuity, and consistency. Create a standard around building a front-loaded schedule of values that includes mobilization, permitting, BIM, submittals, general conditions. I mean, anything that will cost you money in the first 30 days, you need to be able to bill for that immediately and not finance the job. Create a process with your accounting or project management team to follow up with bills after 20, then 30, then 40 days. And after 45 days, escalate to a notice of non-payment to retain your lien rights to the funds. You can make these standards straight in your accounting system for weekly reviews first thing on Mondays, or set a calendar reminder to follow up. But whatever you choose, have your standards so easy and replicable, it happens every time for every employee. The saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, is definitely true when it comes to following up on payment. You might ask, how big of a deal is it really not to collect money for 30 or 60 days? You're going to get it eventually, right? Check out the study done by Procore that analyzes the carrying cost of slow payment construction, and you'll see for yourself how you can put your business out, not chasing invoices that are lingering over 30 days. Number 4, employee retention and satisfaction. This one is so obvious, but it seems to be the lowest priority for leaders nowadays. Imagine this. You have a project manager that's only running 3 jobs. Each job is at different phases. One just started, one's in the middle with some complications, and one is struggling to close out at 90%. This employee has been working extremely long hours to set up a new project and close out an existing one, burning the candle at both ends. They bring it to leadership's attention that they need some help, but it gets brushed off because leadership has plenty of other things they need to handle, and a complaining employee isn't on that list. 2 days later, that employee puts in their 2-week notice. Now the company has to hire someone else. They need to download all of the information for those projects in 2 weeks and bring someone up to speed in that same time frame, not to cause issues. That's nearly impossible because it takes at least 4 weeks to vet a candidate, send a job offer, and have someone put in their 2-week notice to start. Let alone the fact a company is going to pay more for replacing this employee instead of just supporting them in the first place. Studies show that replacing an employee is an immediate cost of 90 to 200% of their annual salary. That's from the cost of a mistake the previous employee may have made being burnt out, the cost of finding a replacement for hire ads or recruiters, and the cost of inefficiency and bringing a new employee up to speed on how a company runs, their system, file structures, everything. And that new employee won't really be productive for at least 6 months. Construction companies today lose more money from employees being burnt out, checked out, untrained, or leaving than any other reason. But I want to hear what you think. Leave a comment of what you'd add or what you think is the most important of these 4 when growing a construction company. Remember, the only reason you started your business was to have financial freedom and less stress of working for someone else. So stop that cycle and go thrive.